Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a horror movie review and I'll be having a look at the movie End of the Line. So this is a Canadian horror film and the very sort of simple synopsis of this film is a group of travellers on a underground train basically have to sort of try and escape a bunch of lunatic sort of religious fanatics, and they're kind of being pursued by all these sort of religious fanatics, and yeah, there may be something else sort of going on at the same time. That's all I kind of say. So without, this film is fairly difficult to review without sort of going into sort of spoilers for this one, because it's actually, you could be looked at it on two layers. If you kind of look at it and don't think too much about it, you can kind of watch it just as almost a kind of a much more linear horror film with kind of, you know, the sort of the scary cult members basically chasing our heroes and stuff like that. But it's actually, if you actually kind of paying attention, it's actually a little bit more deeper than that. But let's talk about some of the sort of the positives and negatives first of all. So the positives of this film, it's actually a very clever film, but it's maybe a little bit too subtle, I think, for its own good. It's a bit too subtle for its own good. It's actually quite a clever story here, and at least it's one of these films that if you're able to pick up on the things, it does leave you thinking. All I'm going to say is muffins. And if you understand what I'm meaning, then you kind of obviously have got where it's trying to go. I think maybe it doesn't do itself any favours. I think maybe the what's actually going on is that it's just a little bit too subtle for its own good. I think it's very, very easy to miss unless you are literally paying attention to everything that's going on. However, you can still kind of enjoy it, but more or less it's just a kind of like you're more of your kind of big movie style, people on the loose type film, and that's kind of what it can be looked at and still enjoyed, I think, in a good way. The other good thing about this film is there's some really good jump scares in it. The first sort of opening sort of 10 minutes has got about 3 or 4 jump scares, and they're probably ones that will make you go Gah! So hats off to them. And if you're not a fan of jump scares, then you ain't going to be a fan of this film. To be fair, the jump scares are kind of they're really sort of on the top of the tail of this film, but you know, for the most, there's quite a few in there. So if I have to say some negatives about this film before I can talk about it a little bit more in depth, I have to say the kind of middle of this film does drag a little bit, and some of the acting from certain characters is a little bit ropey. But overall, it's a really decent film. So from this point on, there's going to be I'm going to talk a little bit more spoilery. These cultist members are sort of trying to kill people because they believe it's going to be the end of the world, and the only way to kind of save humanity is to kill them essentially before the kind of devil sort of takes over their soul at a sort of certain time. So basically, all these sort of cult members think they're doing God's work by going around killing all these kind of random innocent people, and in their mind, they're doing God's work. Now, at the end of the film, obviously, we see that they may have been right. Is one way you can look at it, is we kind of see these sort of, you know, the demons that have come up and we think, oh my God, you know, they were right all along. The demons are sort of attacking Earth. So that's one way you can look at it. However, like I said before, this is a very subtle film, and it's not necessarily that the way that actually happens. We're led to believe that they've been feeding people, including pretty much all the cultist members and probably a lot of members of the public as well, including probably our sort of main protagonist, if you like, a certain type of hallucinogenic drug that has been distributed in a food substance, mainly muffins. It's kind of mentioned 2 or 3 times within the film, so but it's something you quite easily miss, I think. And this basically makes people kind of hallucinate what's going to happen. So the other way you can look at it is there is no end of the world, but everyone is kind of having this kind of like mass hallucination. And there's even some things that in regards to the sort of time frame of the movie that are actually even more subtle than that. Now, I'm not going to go too much into that because I'll leave it for food for thought. So I think there's actually 2 ways you can look at it. So as I say, you can kind of almost ignore the little sort of Easter egg, so to speak, and just watch it as a straight horror film. Or you can kind of maybe pick up on the more sort of subtle undertones and think, you know, was it the end of the world or wasn't it? Or was it just a hallucination? So it's a very, very clever film, but I think maybe it's the actual, if that was where they were going, it's maybe a bit subtle for its own, because I think a lot of people won't pick that up, and then they'll just take it as I said, the first example. But there you go. It's a very, very enjoyable film. It is pretty scary. It does drag a little bit in the middle, I have to say, though. And as I said, some of the acting wasn't fantastic. But overall, it's a lot better film than I thought it was. Don't let the cover fool you too much, because I think it makes it look like a bit more of a typical creature feature, and that's not really it. But 7 out of 10 for me is actually a very, very good film. I enjoyed it. So go check it out if you like an intelligent horror film. Bye for now.